Bunnycast number 48, part 2. Be sure to tune in so you know what to do so we don't stab you. We also review My Little Pony Doctor Who crossover, Doctor Who's number 12, and The Traveler. Killerfish covers, Killerfish, pronounce it,
Tamalai.
And Squato and I go into deep debate over DC Comics Under the Red Hood. Yes, it's the movie. Tune in for that and more on the Bunnycast. This is the Bunnycast Network.
But, you know, it won't really vibrate with the thing.
What do you mean? I mean, this sounds like a perfectly workable engineering project. All you need to do is add a vibrating rotor motor to a bog standard landline phone. Just wire it up to the ringer so that instead of ringing, it vibrates.
Yeah, okay, if you say so. Well, to be fair, I did manage to splice my Xbox controller directly into my PC, so, you know, it's not that difficult to do, I expect. Seriously, it took me 5 minutes to do with some duct tape. And I've got my Xbox controller, which I can now use for video games on my computer.
Very nice. Original Xbox or 360?
Original Xbox.
Hey, that's even better.
I actually used it, so I used a spare adapter for the thing, so that, you know, when it connects to the actual Xbox and it's got a bit and then it's got an adapter which goes to the actual controller, and you can disconnect that. I used the bit between the Xbox and the adapter section, and I modified it there so I can actually pull my Xbox controller out of the one connected to the Xbox and stick it straight into the one connected to the computer, and then vice versa.
Very nice. Very, very nice.
It only works because the USB cables have the same color coding as the Xbox controller system. Basically, the Xbox controller, the original one, is a USB controller.
Oh yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, we have here the Mad Scientist.
This one goes out to the one I've left behind. A simple prop to occupy my time. This one goes out to the one I love.
To the Bunnycast, episode number 48. Yes, this is part 2. Don't ask how it all works. It's too confusing. We have back with us myself and Squato and Lord Killerfish. And just to remind everybody, we are the official podcast of the Bunny community. The Bunny community is the official fan community of Elgunis Shive. Elgunis Shive, EGScomics.com is the official comic of Dan Shive. Dan Shive and EGScomics.com is nothing to do with us.
Dan Shive is the official web cartoonist for the Queen, yes.
Even though he's American?
Yes.
Ah, fancy that.
That's how good Dan Shive is.
Okay, so let's go ahead and launch into our discussion segment. Let's launch into our discussion segment. We're going to talk today about good fan fiction and how to write it.
Yes.
I understand that there's a portion of our audience, and even Dan Shive, who is not keen on fan fiction. So let's actually briefly, before we
for instance, myself for a point.
Let's briefly get into the value of fan fiction. We have discussed this on the Linkara special episodes, so anybody who wants to is welcome to go back and review that. It's Bunnycast special number 2. But just from my perspective, as somebody who reads and writes fan fiction, a community that a fan community that does not have or tolerate fan fiction, and this comes from the person who writes the source material all the way on down, that fan community will not last very long once the source material dries up.
And it will dry up.
Yeah, and it will dry up. I mean,
it's inevitable.
Heaven forbid Dan Shive dies.
Mr. Anderson.
I will have a counterpoint to that one, but I'll say it later.
Heaven forbid Dan Shive dies tomorrow. The fan community will keep things going for a little while, but unless there's the opportunity for the fans to create their own works based on Dan's universe that he has shared, there is not going to continue to be original stories that will keep people involved and interested. Now, Dan himself has said openly that he's not a big believer in fan fiction. However, he hasn't gone after the fanfic writers, of which I am one, and he's aware of this.
He tolerates it, in other words.
Yeah, he doesn't like it for reasons that he has not bothered to elaborate. And, maybe one of these days, if we do manage to get him on the recording, maybe episode 100.
I think he's what sort of made him get the view is that back when it was still on Keenspot, there was some. He didn't mind and he said I think he did take a look at some of it, but there was a few things that turned him against it, and that was the two things that turned him against fanfic was you had people that were doing things with the characters which he didn't like, for instance, porn comics and porn stories. He wasn't a big fan of that. And the other thing that turned him against it is that someone would come up with a fanfic and they're like, and either they would do it, or people that like this story, they'll go, "Oh my god, that was such a good story, Dan! Do what this person did. Do that with your comic. Have your characters do exactly what this person did in this story." So instead of that is a big thing that can turn people against.
Well, that's true, but I mean that's going to be a problem with any fan community. I mean I've worked staff at Comic-Con for 5 years now, maybe longer. No, 6. Anyways, long enough to have encountered many celebrities, especially authors, and inevitably in every single freaking panel, there's going to be that one person who gets up and says, "Hey, I've got this story idea. Would you mind reviewing it and giving it your official seal of approval," or something along those lines, or some idiot with a story idea. I remember it was.
Or you turn this into my story idea. You turn into a thing, but I get copyright for it.
Yeah, exactly. There was this one. Panel that Dan Shai was actually part of. I think it was the first time we as a community, the Bunny community, formed the Order of the Bunny. We went to the Keenspot panel the next day.
That was when I first went to.
Yeah, and we were sitting there as bunnies, as fans of Dan Shive, and we all said, we're going to do our best to make this a great experience for us and Dan, and we're only going to ask smart, intelligent questions. And then some guy, a bunny, who to this day is an embarrassment to everybody that was there, gets up and says, "Now that you have had full transgender transformations, are we going to see any hermaphrodites?"
God, yes, I remember this.
Yeah, everybody who was there, it's like, "Oh my god, this is a scab I want to remove from my brain." And he was promptly booed down by the entire crowd. You could see the shock on Dan's face as he's trying to formulate some sort of response. And for me, that would be like, okay, even if a character were a hermaphrodite, how would you know unless you showed their private bits?
And what's the point, too?
Yeah, and exactly. What's the point? Who cares at this point? It's not going to improve the narrative. It's not going to improve the dialogue. It's not going to improve anything, any aspect of the story. Obviously, it was something that this guy had. Now, I'm transgender. We all know this. Mm-hmm. I like the transgender themes of the comic, but even I'm not going to say that is going to dictate how things are going to go. It's Dan Shive who's writing a story that's about fantasy, about magic, and hey, happens to include some of this kind of story element. And it's like, okay, he's the one that gets to decide where the story goes. He's the one that has the map out in his head, and he's the one with the notes about how things should go, and he's the one that says, this character would work better than this character that I originally had planned for this spot. I'm going to use them. I've worked with other authors. I've been to other authors' panels at Comic-Con. Oh, my wife just corrected me. We've been going to Comic-Con as staff for 9 to 10 years, not 5 to 7. So, like I was saying, I've been to panels with other authors.
So she's going to officially recognise those other years that you were trying to pass off as not happening because you're spying or something like that, hey?
Anyways, Straczynski, J. Michael Straczynski. Everybody knows him as the guy who did Babylon 5, but he's also done other works. Really, really good author. Also screenwriter, etc.
Well, with the right ones, some of his things can be bad.
Okay, we won't develop.
Superman walking across America is bad.
And
yes, that was his.
He regularly, from every fan community that he has touched at all with any of his work, will get stuff from people who's saying, this is my idea, are you going to use it? And his reaction, he just will not even acknowledge the existence of the post about that. There was this one time in the middle of the airing of Babylon 5, I had this dream. It was like an episode from Babylon 5, and I had to post it to the Babylon 5 news groups, which preceded internet forums at the time. Per J. Michael Straczynski's instructions, anything that looked like it might be a story or a plot for an episode was removed from the news group by the moderators so as to prevent any sort of legal difficulty. They even said in the...
Which there was a specific reason for that with that one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My dream was like an episode out of Babylon 5. It fit right in the universe. Now the problem is that if any part of that email were to reach Straczynski's eyes, and he were to see any part of that, if later on, completely coincidentally, he wrote the entire story arc years before he ever got the contract to air it on TV, but if any part of that story arc even came close to resembling whatever it was that I posted, then the concern is not that I could successfully sue him for copyright infringement or whatever, but that even the very fact that I could and tie up, could initiate a suit and tie up lawyers and wind up incurring all these costs, that would come back to bite him in the backside. So I understand authors not wanting to do or even acknowledge fan fiction as part of their community, but the community itself needs to allow for fan fiction no matter the stance of the author, or that community is going to die as a fan community.
I'll say what the Babylon 5 ones, for those people that are interested. There was an episode in the 4th season, and basically the short version is about how in the future that they don't kill anyone, they just basically give them a personality wipe. And this guy who was a killer has to come to terms with what he was, but he's an entirely new person. That's the sort of rough idea with that one. It's a lot better to watch the episode. It's actually a very good episode. What happened though was that in the middle or towards the end of the 1st season, someone posted a fan story, basically very similar idea, and that story was actually planned to be put into the 2nd season. So they had to pull that story, put in something else, which apparently actually worked quite well, but they had to pull the originally planned story, which was that, and then they had to go through a year or so of legal wrangling to actually find this person, get the person, and then have a thing signed off so that there was no issue with this person for the fact that they had just arbitrarily just come up with this idea for a story based on some elements which being put in the show already, which as it turns out was going to be on the show.
Sorry about that.
That's where the blanket...
Sorry if you can hear a ringing noise. I'm sorry about that. That's just a minor alarm going off. Nothing to worry about. Biological terrorism not currently taking over the world. Stay indoors. Don't breathe too deeply. Everything will be fine.
Okay, let's move.
I'm in Australia. I don't care. We're on the opposite side of the planet. Nothing gets us.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Nothing in any of my underground labs there at all.
Okay, so let's get actually into the meat of the discussion. Good fan fiction and how to write it.
Yes.
First off, writing how you talk is okay if you if you talk well. Note I didn't say talk good.
I talk good. I talk good all the time.
If you don't talk well with a good grasp of the language that you are writing for, in our case English, then you are not going to be a competent, prolific writer if you attempt to write like you talk.
Yes.
That said,
which is also one other little point. I'm sorry, I do a bit of editing for some person that's actually not an English speaker, but they do their stories in English. If you're going to actually have characters speak, because you've got a side point you made me, Homer, if you're going to have people speak and you write them speaking, actually speak what you physically say what you made your characters say, because trust me, if there's one thing that I really hate having to see sort of thing that a lot of people still do, and is that they have their characters saying really weird statements that make no grammatical sense whatsoever, and they make no sense to hear it, but they wrote them down there, and
we must hack the internets, all of the internets.
Bingo.
Yes.
Okay, so that's number one. Number two is kind of what we're hinting at, is know your subject.
Yes. That's my personal pet peeve.
If you're writing about, if you're writing about, say, one of my particular favorite genres, if you're writing about Ranma 1/2, know Ranma 1/2. I understand if all you know is the anime and you haven't read the manga, but if you're going to write something and say this is Ranma 1/2 canon, you better understand that there are people out there that are going to say which one, manga or anime, and are the direct-to-video movies going to be
The OVAs?
The OVAs, thank you. Are they going to be considered part of your canon? Because some stuff happens in there that contradicts some stuff in the manga. Some of it is,
and the anime as well too.
And the anime, exactly. So be aware that you're going to have a very tough audience, because some of these people are going to know the core source material way better than you.
Backwards, forwards, upside down, and left to front.
Yes, exactly. Some of them know it so well they could form a tesseract, which is a physically impossible object.
On the same side, make sure that you've actually got an idea of your own canon, because I always laugh when you see someone that writes a story and they contradict themselves, say, the next paragraph with something that occurs. Or redundancy is redundancy's friend.
Yeah. There is another thing as well. You have to be absolutely certain that you know the source material. I know we've already said this, but there are certain... When you're reading fan fiction, sometimes you pick up on a fact, and then you go back and you write your own one, and you assume that that's an established fact in the source material. But then when you go back over the source material, you find that that's not actually specifically laid out in the source material.
Oh yeah.
I take for example Naruto, because I've read a lot of Naruto fanfiction. I've also got the manga books, so I can go back and check. But it's never specifically stated in any of the books that I've read that Naruto was physically abused in his childhood. And yet, nearly all the fan fictions I've read have stated that he was chased by mobs and beaten up when he was 4, and he was kicked out of the orphanage, and this is never stated in the comic. How did they know he was kicked out of the orphanage? Yes, he's living alone.
Hence,
in an apartment,
actually saying that, I love the ones that do that go with the emo sort of stuff with Naruto, for instance. That's when you get people really start to play up that type thing because so people hate him, he's unliked. He's so depressed. I so attach my mind to him. Ugh.
Okay, both of what you're both talking about something that he does appear in fan fiction. And that is, first off, what Killerfish was talking about, is something that comes up and can be a major problem called fanon, where it's not canon. It's something that came about as a result of the fans creating something, and a good example of a fanon-created thing. For the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic series, quite a bit, a surprisingly, shockingly large amount, in fact, of fan fiction has been written. From one of the stories called Progress, came this idea that Princess Luna carries around an abacus. This is, of course, since she's only had about 12 seconds of screen time for the entire series so far, not established as canon at all. And everybody in the fandom who writes and reads fan fiction understands that this is an artifact of fandom, that somehow Luna is supposed to be carrying around an abacus. Only present day Luna, not ancient 1,000 years ago Luna, just modern day Luna is carrying around an abacus. And
Abacus. I'm trying to think what that is again. Sorry.
It's a Chinese calculator, ancient Chinese calculator.
Oh yeah.
With the beads.
Beads on bits of
Yes.
wood for counting.
So this is considered to be, this is something that is part of Luna's character. And at this point, honestly, if the creative team behind My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, when they do finally include Luna back into the series as a character that returns, if they don't in some way work in the abacus, or they directly contradict this idea that Luna has an abacus that she carries around sort of like a security blanket, there's probably going to be fan revolt.
But you're not doing what we thought you would be doing.
Hey, I know there was a lot of reaction. You're saying with the My Little Pony, I know there was a fair bit of reaction when they had a fan story of showing Pinkie Pie basically as being a character that likes to Hannibal Lecter people, invite them over, kill them,
Cupcakes,
and
yes.
eat them.
It's very, very famous. I have never read it, but I know exactly what it is. Yes,
it's disturbing too. But the thing is, what really made people pay attention was when they had Pinkie Pie had a little freak out episode. And like, wait, did they actually unintentionally sort of give hints to that story?
It's like if that's a producer homage to Cupcakes, it's like, my hat's off to you, good sirs.
But yeah, as we're trying to say, know what is established canon and what isn't. And if you're doing something which is different from established canon, clearly make sure that people are aware of this.
Exactly. Now, one thing that, getting back to Ranma fanfic world, because that's more generally where I spent most of my time as a fanfic author.
You spend most of your life living in around the fanfiction universe.
Yes, exactly. In this Ranma fanon, there is one thing that is consistent in that in fanon, Ranma doesn't hit girls. The problem with this notion is this is directly and completely, totally, unequivocally contradicted by the source material. Anime, manga.
Yeah. Even the OVAs.
Exactly, because, I mean, he has no problem hitting a girl if they're in the middle of a fight. If they're martial artists, he's a martial artist. He's going to wail on them if necessary in order to win the fight. Ranma doesn't lose. I mean, that's period. Anime, manga, fanon. Period. Ranma doesn't lose. And if that means hitting a girl, he's going to hit the girl.
To be fair, he doesn't actually normally start fights. It's normally they hit him
That's
first.
very true. He never starts the fight, but he will finish it, and he will win. Period.
Exactly.
Somehow, and there.
And if he loses a fight, he will make sure that he will get that person back. That is when he will start a fight.
Well, he could just continue. He just considers it an extension of the original fight. The
Yes,
fight never
true.
ended. I just regrouped. Anyways,
Saltomi final attack.
exactly. One.
So tell me, family's final attack, surrendering like a tiger, or whatever that's actually called. Most
Let's see, the cry of the crouching tiger or something like that. Anyways, there was
yes.
actually a member of the Ranma fan community that tracked down where this particular piece of fanon came from. It came from what was like you know how with any fandom there will be an initial groundswell, and then it will settle off, and then more fans will learn about it, and there will be another groundswell, and then it'll settle down, and there will be these bubbles. In one of the original bubbles of American Ranma fan community growth, there was a fan fiction author who was at the time one of the better, more competent, well-produced. He did a good job. Okay, I'm stumbling over my own words. He did a very good job writing a good, competent, well-produced, easy-to-read fan fiction in which he establishes for his universe that Ranma doesn't hit girls. Because a large number of fanfic writers saw this as an early work without having access to the original manga in large quantity and only having seen whatever the number of episodes were available on video at the time, that became the fanon, and nobody had any way of contradicting it. Fast forward, I think it was...
Because that would have been early internet, there would have been still, early internet fan community, so in that sense, there would have been just not that much information. The primary source would have been a bit of collected information, and you would have had the stories that people would have worked on, and they would have gone off the stories as being naturally the official stuff.
Exactly.
Well, of having the canon.
Well, if 10 some odd years later, when the internet is widespread enough that everybody has a connection, even if it is just dial-up, there is a community project started called the Ranma Scan Project, where they were going to go back and scan every single manga that had ever been produced and translated into English. And the ones that hadn't been translated, they found fans to do the translating. 32 volumes, all told, were posted online. And you better believe the stuff hit the fan. Because all of these assumptions about this is what happened for this particular fight, this is how this person's personality is, this is where this character was introduced in the timeline, tons of stuff just had to be completely scrapped and then reintroduced. Now, fans today, they have a lot of benefits. The My Little Pony community, you better believe if you contradict something in an episode, you're going to be jumped all over.
Even if you contradicted before an episode, or your thing came out before an episode is aired, they'll stop on you because you got it wrong.
There's a few fan fictions that survive such a thing. One is I forget the title, but the premise is that it turns out that Rainbow Dash is actually Princess Celestia's love child that had been given out in adoption at a very, very young age to an elderly couple who had since died, and so Rainbow Dash was out on her own. And the only reason this came out was that Rainbow Dash suddenly sprouted a horn. And the author made it work within the context of their story, but within the context of the story, they made the cult that had this affair with Princess Celestia be Pinkie Pie's dad. And
Okay.
yeah, and before the episode wherein I think it's the Cutie Mark Chronicles where we find out the nature of Pinkie Pie's family and specifically her father, it held up. Now that episode has been released and we know what Pinkie Pie's pa is like, It doesn't. It falls apart. But it was well written enough, and people like it enough that they decided, you know what, we're going to keep this. This is okay.
It's a legacy one.
Exactly. It's a legacy work, and it's okay as long as everybody understands it's not fanon, right?
Yeah.
There's another example.
There was actually something else about fanfiction that I wanted to talk about, but I'll get onto that in a second after you finish talking about My Little Ponies.
Okay.
There was another story that had a sort of similar type of thing. I can't think what it was. It was I had it, then mind blanked.
Mind blank? Good, I can jump on this and bring up my personal pet peeve about certain fanfictions. Huzzah! Can I do that?
Yeah,
I have
go
to
ahead.
ask permission first. I was just reading the other day a particular fan fiction, which was a cross between Harry Potter and Stargate, which is always a bit.
You know what? I'm
fun
just trying to work out right now what the fucking theme for that would be. The theme music, I mean.
No, I can't do it. No. Anyway, distracting ourselves for a second. Harry Potter, Stargate. Yes, there's a lot of fanon facts about those two, where Harry is an ancient Alteran or whatever. But this one guy, he started off and he was doing conversations and he was separating every single sentence somebody was talking with quotation marks when he was doing his conversation, and then not separating them out, which was so annoying.
So it was basically a wall of text.
It was a wall of text, but it was the same person talking. So it's as if I said yes, and then I started another sentence directly afterwards, but for some unfathomable reason, put quotation marks around both sentences and put them both back to back.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that's stupid. Look, for anyone that wants to have a small, quick tip for anything, like, but they want to do, wants to do a bit of writing, and they have to do a bit of a longer section where there's a bit of discussion, or the person is speaking. A good tip: have an action. Helps speed things up.
This is the thing. I've not finished with describing this yet. How awfully bad it was the fact that
it got worse.
It gets worse. Yes, it separates each sentence out with quotation marks, even if it's the same character speaking. But then it mixes different characters in between.
What?
Yes, it mixed it. One character talking, and then with no paragraph or separation to tell it was a different character speaking, they would switch it in, and that's not the worst. But by the time it gets to the end of the fan fiction, the guy's just stopped writing conversation altogether.
Oh, good lord!
He's just describing what the characters are doing and said, "Yes, Harry has gone over to the Alteran homeworld and he's picked up the ZPM." And he went to, and it's just a whole run of stuff saying, and then he did this. Oh, and SG-1 managed to find this other alien race. So Harry took the information that he found from this place and gave it to them, and it just got so describe-y, and it didn't describe what the characters were doing. It was just it didn't describe what they were doing.
It did the Scarlet Letter screw up.
Yeah. It didn't provide the context for what they were doing, other than, yes, I've set up this so that we can colonize Mars.
Yeah.
Yes, whilst that's going on in the background, we're doing this. Oh, look, we've come back to Mars and it's now fully colonized.
For those who are unfamiliar with the Scarlet Letter screw up, I call it that. It's not an official use of any sort of catch in the English lexicon. If you ever read the original Scarlet Letter, not any adaptation, not any condensation, not any condensed works, not the audiobook, or anything resembling the sort, the original Scarlet Letter, the first, it's either first chapter or first 3 chapters, I forget which, focus on this rose bush. Just the rose bush. Going on and on about the freaking rose bush. And I guess it functions as the author's test to see if you're worthy of reading the rest of the story. But it's like, I would have started reading that chapter and I would have put it away because I don't care about a rosebush. Now, granted, I didn't
That's an awesome rosebush.
Shut up, you.
This rosebush cured cancer.
I don't care. It's still a rosebush.
This rosebush is a god. But what does God need with a starship?
The thing to remember when you're trying to describe anything is, what's the freaking point? If there's actually a point to what you're talking about, make it.
Yes.
Make your danged point. Don't sit there and force everybody to go through this ridiculous, long, drawn-out description of something that never, ever, ever comes back to the story again.
Yeah.
So
But this is sort of this particular one was sort of the opposite of that happening. It's beginning, even though it had those problems with the quotation marks, it was very good. It introduced the characters, it developed the characters, and then at the end of it, it was just trying to condense all the episodes of Stargate SG-1 as if Harry Potter was in it and he was building up a massive harem.
Yeah.
Which,
Quick tips to anyone that wants to do any story. Yeah, go, Killerfish.
What I was going to say, if you're going to start it where you're going to develop the characters and you're going to pay attention to what they're doing and actually drive the characters through, don't switch styles halfway through and condense the entirety of a plot. It's annoying.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's a few other tips. I'm going to just fire through these real fast because we are running long on this topic, which is good because it just proves there's a lot to go on, and we may have to break this up into parts 1 and 2 and do another recording for our next episode. Moving on, a couple things. First off,
because I will say I might hold off on that because I've got a fair. I do a bit of writing and I've done a bit of editing and things like that. I can tell you a lot of tips to what people. And I give you a really great ideas as to how to, if anyone wants to get into it. But I hold that till next time.
Okay, fantastic. So we're gonna do multiple parts to this. I'm gonna fire off a few tips of my own, and I'm going to do just a smidge of background for a couple of them. First off, there was I don't know if he's still on the internet, but there was in Ranma fanfic world a guy named Master Magi. He sucked as a writer. He was terrible. Just conceptually, artistically, everything about his writing sucked, but he loved himself so much that he was convinced that everything that he wrote in prose in any way, shape, or form was magnificent. He was so hackneyed, every single story could be told in exactly the same way. I at one point had considered writing a post for the condensed Ranma fanfiction archive saying all of Master Magi's work. Basically, first off, he did not know how to write. Period. He just did not know how to write. He stunted writing style. Everything was in lowercase. Punctuation was flawed to the extreme. Question marks where there needed to be commas. I mean, it was painful to read.
You make it sound like that the spell checker would have just seen this and just committed suicide on it.
Pretty much. That was pretty much my assessment as well.
You sure it wasn't some interpretive attempt at ASCII art?
It could have been. But the second major problem was everything went very predictably. I don't care what the primary plot was supposed to be. Number one, you always knew exactly how it was going to happen with any of his stories, because if you'd read one, you would know that it gets introduced this way. There's going to be this plot twist here. The Tendo sisters are going to do this. This gets resolved with this other character in this exact same way in every single story. And oh yeah, by the way, the Tendo's mom isn't dead. She's just in hiding, a ninja. had to pretend she was dead for the government. There was some way that she was going to come back in the story in some fashion, and she was always, in every single story, best friends with Noriko Satome, Ranma's mom. Every single one of these stories happened exactly the same way, no matter what the other dressing on the story was, because the guy was not creative at all. So, two things to be learned from this. Know how to write your language. Know how to use capitalization, spelling, punctuation, grammar, sentence structure, essay structure, storytelling structure. Know that when you switch from one character's dialogue to another character's dialogue, that's a new paragraph. I don't care if it's a one-sentence paragraph.
Please.
You carriage your turn and you start a new paragraph when you put down another set of quotation marks for another character. Period.
Please pay
As I
attention
said, if
to
it
that.
hurts. Yes, as I said, if need be, have them do an action at the same time. For instance, person says something, they turned around, you set a new paragraph. They're saying something again because, but it's a new action.
Exactly. Problem number 2. Don't write Space Marine. Do not write Space Marine, and I call it Space Marine as a sort of generic for every story of this type, and there is always going to be this type
That
of story.
actually is the trope name, by the way.
Space Marine is, in some way, certain character X is a badass. They are a super badass. They are such a badass that nothing is a challenge for them. Period. At all.
God,
Ever.
I hate those.
And they don't necessarily have to be a Space Marine to fall under the Space Marine problem genre, because there was this one fanfic for Sailor Moon. It was Sailor Moon 1/1/2 crossover, where Akane was the reincarnation of the Space Marine, and she awakened at some point to become, this super duper super soldier in charge of XYZ whatever. The major problem with Space Marine stories is they don't ever, and I do mean ever, have good writing. Period. The author is always so super impressed with their own ability to create this badass character that they are convinced that no matter what they write for this badass character, it's going to be glorious. They're going to win awards. It's going to be published. The original creators of the characters are going to hand over every single right in the world because this is such a magnificent badass character that nobody could ever conceive of this kind of badass character, which looks just like every other Space Marine character on the planet.
The only type of those which I like are the ones which show the character slowly progressing to that level, as if they have to actually earn the right to be badass.
Yeah, the only one of that genre, kind of like what you're saying, where the character has to progress, that I ever liked was actually an original movie starring Kurt Russell. I think it was. Was it Kurt Russell? Anyways. It's called Soldier, but not the best movie.
Oh, that one, yeah, that one's technically it's either considered a fan fiction to Blade Runner, or it's the same.
Then whoever said that never saw
canon.
it. It's whoever said that they never saw it.
Well, it comes off the fact that there is the line in the Blade Runner where the guy saw the beams of light off the Tallahassee Gate. In one of the battles that the guy was in was the Tallahassee Gate, and the people that did it, they even said that they actually planned it to be part of that same canon.
Okay, that's fine, but it's okay.
It doesn't need to be.
Yeah, it's if it's part of the same universe, it's almost coincidental because really you don't need to know one to know the other at all. In any case,
yeah. No.
In Soldier, first off, it does show the development of these kids selected at birth to becoming these super soldiers. But the trick,
that was a great part.
The trick about Soldier, the thing that kept it from being your average idiotic, stupid Space Marine story, is that the super soldier is suddenly bested by a new breed of super soldiers, and he's tossed out like the garbage. And he has to learn.
Literally.
Yeah, literally tossed out like the garbage. He has to learn what it's like to be human from a band of refugees, and then he has to learn, or then he has to be able to take down the super soldiers that took him down in the first place. He has to grow, he has to change, he has to develop. In other words, there's a starting point, and sure, none of us could take this guy on. He was a super soldier, he was a space marine, but something came along and challenged that supremacy as a space marine, and he had to grow and adapt and become better from it. And
I believe the term is equilibrium, conflict, resolution, new equilibrium.
Right, exactly. And I think the most telling thing about how far this character has grown is, and spoiler alert by the way, at the end of the movie, it shows his other fellow space marines who grew up with him, went through the same program, etc. They're all on this ship that now has these refugees on it. And this kid from the refugees comes up to the super soldiers, and all the other super soldiers are like, what do we do? Meanwhile, this guy who went through this story arc, who had to grow and develop, he says, oh, I know exactly, he doesn't say it, but he knows exactly what to do to be sort of a friend, a companion to this kid. He picks the kid up and starts doing the sort of adult-to-kid thing, which none of the other soldiers knew how to do, because they were the bog standard space marine that didn't have anything else to do with any of the rest of humankind, whereas this super soldier had to go through that adventure. They had to change, they had to grow, which concludes another point. When you're telling a story, the character has to change and grow. If they don't change and grow, nothing happens.
That's what I'm trying to work. I was going to say, well, with that, with the Space Marine point, I'm sort of debating with Master Chief from the Halo series, because I know people. The argument made is that you don't see any growth, but then again, a lot of people still classify Master Chief as a compelling character.
Well, I would challenge those to say there's no growth.
Yeah,
there is to a point, but there is. It depends on how you sort of view it, but where I say that the big things with Master Chief and where he is a compelling, which is that he's a compelling character, and that's because the people that did him did a brilliant job of actually doing the character.
Yeah.
Particularly when they don't need to actually speak. You know this guy doesn't need to speak.
Here's the thing about Master Chief and the whole Halo universe. He was a Spartan raised to work as part of a team with other Spartans. By the time the first Halo video comes out, he was considered to be the last Spartan. And he has to now learn how to work with normal humans.
Oh, he had been doing that for a while.
Well, okay. Actually, okay, we're without delving too deep into that universe.
Yes.
Talking about Master Chief as a character that needs to grow, but still be part of a video game. First off, the reason Master Chief is a compelling character is because of his lack of identity outside of the fact that he's the Master Chief. The player can insert themselves into the game, which is what you're supposed to do as a video game. Now, the player at that point becomes the main character, and through the game, as they progress, they have to grow and change and adapt to this universe as the Master Chief. That's why the Master Chief is a compelling character of a video game, of a narrative and a story arc. Microsoft and Bungie and the authors that they contracted with had to find ways of taking Master Chief as they had him and developing him into an interesting character. And if you read The Fall of Reach, which was the first of the Halo novelizations to come out, it talks about how...
Which is now being contradicted by the game.
Okay. In the book, The Fall of Reach, Master Chief goes from being this kid that they pick at random because he's an orphan, develops him into...
actually, but I won't be too nitpicky about that.
He develops into the leader of a team of these Spartan soldiers and an integral part of the crew that Captain Keyes picks out. That's character growth. That's the character growth of the Master Chief. But in the video game sense, the reason he's a compelling character is because the player, through him, can work to grow. That's why video games have a different... Okay, if we keep going down this path, this is going to turn into an episode of The Escapist. Good web series. Go watch. It's The Escapist on
No, the Escapist is the online magazine.
Right, you're right.
Is there any particular videos on there?
No, it's
Yahtzee, is it?
no, not Yahtzee.
Zero punctuation. No, not zero punctuation.
Extra credit?
Hey, extra credits. Thank you. Yeah, we don't want this to become an episode of extra credits. Sorry about the noise in the background. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, self-inserts can work out, but balance them carefully. You do not want to have a self-insert that is just like everybody freaking else's self-insert. And here's your standard problem with a self-insert. I am a character that nobody has seen before. I came from the universe wherein all of this is a story, and I know everything about you, and I am going to be your friend. Reality, this would be, you're nuts. Men in white coats, take them away, please. In this fantasy, you're right, you are my friend because you know everything about me. I like you now. In fact, if you're the opposite sex as me, or if the author happens to be homosexual, if you're the same sex as me, let's make like rabbits. Reality.
I actually read
creepy.
a good I actually read a good self-insert the other day, which actually had acknowledged this fact that if somebody did try doing that in a universe with an established fiction base back here in our reality, that it would be considered to be mad or insane. So this person wrote an entire fan fiction about how this character was going around deliberately trying not to get involved with the story at all.
And you know what? Those make the best self-insert fan fictions. I started writing a self-insert
deconstructions.
I never really progressed beyond a certain point, but I've decided I'm going to post the chapters that I've got online, and so far it's quite popular. I don't know why. It's a self-insert. I warn people, don't read this. I'm just posting it because I need filler while I work on my Wrong One Half Sailor Moon fanfic vision. But people are reading it, and they like it. They're posting it to the watch list. It's like, what are you doing? You're insane! Stop it! Relatedly to the self-insert and direction nobody should ever go, and if you go there, you need to seek help. The Mary.
If you really are a fan of self-inserts, I will just point you to Twilight. That's all I need to say. Although you did make us, I just remembered because you were saying about how the Master Chief worked. That was sort of a lot of the points
stop
behind.
Talking about Master Chief. That's Squato.
Wait,
that.
I was going to say you do know I would have finished a lot long already. I was going to say a lot of your points you were making there, Homer, is exactly what they were doing with the Halo film when it was the guy that did District 9.
Peter Jackson.
Yeah, Peter Jackson, the director of District 9. That was all the big points that they were making with Halo if they actually had have done the Halo film.
Yeah.
Which was trying to make a compelling story that's about Halo and has Master Chief in it, but without him being the central character. And they actually had apparently a very good plan. One that Microsoft was really trying to push, but no one wanted to front up the $500 million for it.
Of course. So, okay, getting back to Mary Sue's. Do not ever...
And Marty Seuss?
Write a Mary Sue. Here's what this character is. Hi, I'm a new character. I'm not the author. I promise I'm not the author. In fact, if you look at me, I'm so much better than the author. I can do everything. I can cook better than the author. I can clean better than the author. I can do quantum physics better than the author. I can do basic engineering better than the author. In fact, I can do everything better than anybody else in the story, even the established characters. If there's a character in the story that can do anything better than me, it's just because I'm holding back and I'm nice that way. Doesn't everybody love me? Other characters within the story of the Mary Sue. Yes, we love you, even if I'm not. Even if I don't say I love you right now, it's just because I'm harboring feelings of intense resentment. But I love you anyway.
And jealousy.
And jealousy. Deep down inside. And everything I do that's against you is actually an expression of my love for you. Don't write this character!
Oh,
don't!
God, Twilight all over again.
There is a great image on DeviantArt. While you were saying that, I'm trying to get it to load up. Here it is. It's got up. It's the image person's got it is Mary Sue, How to Tell. I'm linking it so that Homer can read the thing.
Okay.
It's just brilliant. I'll give you the original character. Here you go, Homer. The original character is someone that basically they're plain. But they're interesting. You look at them and like, yeah, this is nice. And the person that's got green hair, cat ears, and a cat tail, and they've got a cat. But they're sort of people you can match with. Other one, big-breasted woman with long, luscious blonde hair that has angel wings that floats in the air and is a princess, but she's really a queen, but she likes to be a princess because that's the nice thing. And she's surrounded by animals because animals love her, including unicorns!
Exactly. Now, Killerfish mentioned Twilight a few times now, as did Squato. And I'd just like to, as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who is not representative of the whole and cannot speak for the Church, would like to lay something to rest right now. What's her name? The author of Twilight?
Stephanie Meyer.
Stephanie Meyer. Stephanie Meyer wrote an atrocious piece of bad fan fiction for a series that she clearly did not really understand and really has no freaking clue how to actually write a good story. And she calls her characters vampires and werewolves, even though very clearly they are not. What they are is the stereotypical, white bread, idiotic, stupid cultural perfection fantasy of the Salt Lake Molly Mormon that no man can ever possibly hope to match up, meet, or achieve in any way, shape, or form. This is pure fat fiction for Mormons. If you have any sort of inkling that it's something that's a good piece of fiction that has some merit to its own, that it stands out on its own, do not kid yourself. Yes, I am a member of the same religion that this woman claims. And yes, I recognize every single freaking allegory and allusion to something that is part of my religion, and I am disgusted by the whole of it. It is terrible. It's badly written. The woman cannot write at all. Yes, I have read some of the work, and every single time I want to throw up and throw the entire thing in the trash and burn the rest.
And I
To be
generally
fair,
get that feeling every time.
I was going to say, there is apparently she has done one really good story, not anything to do with Twilight. It's actually a completely separate universe or things like that. And it's the short version of it is that it's after an alien invasion has taken place, and they have these aliens put their minds into these people's bodies, but the person is there as well, and they are able to basically experience what this person is feeling, and they have all the emotions and stuff like that. So these aliens start to get humanized by the contact with humans. And it's the sort of how this plays out is that there's this character who has there's just basically kept as a blob in space, is put into this body of this girl, a teenager, and she has feelings for this guy. And the blob, as a result of the person, starts to get feelings for this person and becomes humanized. Now, people have sort of done something like that. It's simple enough, but apparently it actually, how she did it works, particularly because it's only one book.
Oh, thank God I don't have to read an entire damn series.
Okay, so
it's not the best one, but for her, it's basically a Nobel Prize winner.
we have gone on for 50 minutes on fanfiction. We are not done yet, so let's go ahead and wrap up the discussion segment for this particular week. We're going to cover our fundraising one more time. We are, of course, seeking donations. We've received some donations, but this does not mean by any stretch that we've received enough to meet all of our operational costs. We're loving the fact that the bunnies out there are seeing what we're doing and saying, I'd like to see this continue. Please make it happen. So by all means, send us whatever it is that you feel that you can give us, whatever you feel it's worth, even if you're saying, you owe me time! If you could, by way of request, let us know in your donation. There's on PayPal, there's a way to say, notes to the seller or notes to the person I'm donating to, special instructions. Let us know if you'd like us to acknowledge your donation live on the air. Some people don't like that. Some people do. If you want that, let us know by all means. We want to make sure that you are given whatever credit you feel is due.
Otherwise, we'll just list how many Bobs we've got money from this.
Exactly. Bob, we'd like to thank Bob and Bob as well. Thank you, Bob. So
we're going to Bobby this time, so thank you, Bobby.
Let's talk about reviews. As promised from last week's episode, I'm going to review a second Doctor Who's fan fiction, which is not related to the first Doctor Who's fan fiction I reviewed. That one, actually, I'm not going to mention the previous one. I'm going to talk about number 12 and Traveler. Yes, it's another coupled review because one follows from the other. This one is quite a bit different, whereas in the previous one it was the entire gang. This one, it's just Twilight that learns about the Doctor, and I think maybe Pinkie Pie knows about him, if I recall right. This one is really, really good, but read through number 12 because you have to kind of get the foundational understanding of this universe, the Doctor in this universe, etc., to get to Traveler. Traveler is a magnificent piece of Doctor Who writing, even if you were to change every single reference to a pony to a human. This is such a magnificent piece of work that let's say our production of the Bunnycast network really takes off. We get enough money that we can start seeding into creative endeavors. If that were to happen, I would secure the rights to do a My Little Pony spinoff, a Doctor Who spinoff, use all the music that's necessary, all the properties necessary to create this, because it is just that good. And I can practically guarantee that both fandoms would love this. It's written so well to integrate the My Little Pony personalities and the Doctor Who universe in such a way that you would never think this is going to be this good. It provides the time travel elements. It provides the paradox resolution that the Doctor has to do. It has multiple time periods. You don't know what's happening in the story, even though you encounter the Doctor at various places throughout the timeline. You know he's going to resolve it in some way. You don't know how, because there's this big dangling paradox right at the end. And even better, there's multiple enemies from the Doctor Who series that show up in different ways, but in a unique and creative way that's not just, oh look, it's the Cybermen coming in from the void to convert the ponies into cyber ponies. It's gorgeous, and yes, you will be sitting on the edge of your seat wanting the next chapter, even though the chapter you're reading just got posted a half an hour ago, and you're like, I need to know what happens next! Don't torture me like this! Okay, so plot and synopsis.
Only request I have is that they make sure that the David Bowie references are plentiful.
The plot synopsis for Traveler. After resolving the situation with the Weeping Pegasuses in number 12, the Doctor and Twilight Sparkle encounter a paradox. The Doctor, from a future point in time, has been popping back to try and find a particular point in time and keeps screwing it up, making that future Doctor's awareness known to the past Doctor, which causes the paradox. And yes, the Reavers show up. Yes, they've got cutie marks. And the Doctor just manages to contain it while he takes the TARDIS to the future point in time where the paradox starts. It's time travel. Don't think too hard about it. At this future point in time, which I think is 35 years in the future, Equestria is ruled with an iron fist, or an iron hoof, I should say, by tyrant Twilight Sparkle. So, present-day Twilight and the Doctor have to find out what happened to bring Twilight Sparkle of this timeline to where she is, and they have to find out how to undo the damage to keep this timeline from occurring, as well as resolve the paradox that caused the timeline to start in the first place. It introduces this fantastic, gorgeous, brilliant, beautifully written Doctor Who villain called the Raggedy Pony. It fits so well with the whole idea of the perfect lexagonal Doctor Who monster. It's basically this tyrant Twilight commissions her old friend Rarity to make these raggedy doll ponies, life-size, and then Tyrant Twilight enchants them to be somewhat autonomous. Not free will or anything like that, just literally these autonomous enforcers of her will that can never be turned, that can never be bribed, that can never be brought over to the other side in any way, shape, or form.
That is an awesome idea.
Oh, it is! And even better, somebody took this Raggedy Pony idea and made a little Raggedy Pony. They took a picture and they posted it to Equestria Daily. If you go to, let's see, if here's the shortened URL, goo.gl/N+C KCL, you will see the picture, and it's awesome!
Wow. So you really enjoyed that then?
Oh, you better believe it. And yesterday there was an update posted, and yes, I finished it in half an hour, and yes, at the end I'm all, damn it! Because
it was like a real episode of Doctor Who then?
Yeah, it was the classic episodic Doctor Who cliffhanger, and you want to know more right now!
Damn it, why is there a short 2.5 minute thing to whet our appetites for the next episode?
Exactly. So yes, really, really good. If you're a Doctor Who fan, or if you're My Little Pony brony, or if you're any combination of the two, or even if you're not, take a look. It's really quality, really good. You're going to love it. I really promise. Okay, that's it. Killerfish, why don't you go ahead with your review?
Okay, let me just get the book out. Right, there we go. The book I am reviewing is David Eddings, a fantastic author, even though he does go back on his work and sometimes forget what he's written in previous work, but I'm willing to forgive him for that. Basically, the one I'm reviewing today is the Tamalai, which is the follow-on series to his series The Elenium, featuring yes, thank you very much, the Pandian knight Sparhawk, who is a bit of a he's an everyman who's also a knight who can wield magic.
Okay.
by everyman I mean he's in his 30s. He's got a broken nose. When he was younger, he was charged by the king of wherever it is. I haven't read for quite a while, so I'm forgetting a few facts. He was given. It was told by his king to look after the king's daughter, so he did, and he was an older man looking after a young girl. And for the Elenium, what happened is the young girl became queen, and she was poisoned and had to be put into a form of stasis, and he had to go and find a cure for that. And by the end of that series, it turns out that as the girl was growing up, she had a massive crush on Sparhawk.
I see.
And so, in order for Sparhawk to conclude his final step in the quest that he's on, he had to make a concession to her to marry her, basically. Mm-hmm. Because she was holding something over his head, but also he did. There was. It's a bit complicated, but it's a good little thing. But as it progressed into the next series, the Tamalai, it turns out he's more than what you thought he was in the first series. And this is one of my things of a character slowly progressing on and upwards along the stages of badassery to greater and greater levels until they reach a point where they can do anything, and then what does he do? He gives up all his power.
All shall love me and despair, but that's okay.
No, literally what happens by the end of the books, he's literally got the power to do anything. He can shoot bolts of lightning without thought. He can recreate matter to a single thought. He's basically all powerful. And what does he do? He doesn't like it. He's too alien. His thought processes, when he's got to that stage, is to such a degree that he can't think in a human manner anymore. And because of that, he's losing contact with his emotions and everything that comes with being just a person bound by a single shape. So he gets rid of all his power just so he can be a normal person.
Grew too far too fast and didn't like what he found.
Well, he grew to a certain level because he had to, and once he was done with it, he gave it all up so he could go back to normal.
Interesting. That's that works as a story arc. There's that has to be handled carefully, and it sounds like you like it, so it sounds like it was. Because I mean, there are examples, and the specific one I'm thinking of is the DC Comics handling of Kyle Rayner as Green Lantern.
Yes.
Kyle Rayner as Green Lantern was a much better, much more believable, much more approachable and friendly version of the Green Lantern than they had ever written. Ever. Period. End of sentence. And then
why didn't they make the movie about him?
Well, apparently they were supposed to. But the senior...
which was... trying to think which one he was, sorry.
He was the artist after the Corps was disbanded.
Oh... the controversial one, gotcha.
Yeah, apparently the movie was supposed to be about Kyle Rayner, and that's why the guy who plays Hal Jordan in the movie was picked, is because he was supposed to be Kyle Rayner, not Hal Jordan. Apparently he plays the Kyle Rayner much better than he plays Hal Jordan, and I can understand that because Hal Jordan's a dick. Okay,
yep,
so
I'd agree with that.
Why do you think it makes logical sense that he would kill half the universe?
Exactly. Now, what they did with Kyle Rayner as Green Lantern is, because he had the last of the Green Lantern rings, and because he had access to all the Green Lantern power and ability, eventually he wound up growing so much bigger, better, and more powerful that he became... oh, what was the name of the parent?
Zion.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Ion. What did I say, Zion? Zion, hear me!
No, you're right. And they did that well in terms of how they treated the character while he had that power, and then he gives it up. Okay. Not well written, not well handled. And at that point I kind of lost interest in Kyle Rayner as a character beyond what I knew of him as the artist, and basically everything before he became Lion. And
I'm trying to think what the group was. There was a group where basically they were the supporters of the old Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. It had an actual name.
Hal Jordan is the one true Green Lantern.
Yeah, well, they need to be stabbed in the eye. Because the original Green Lantern was a cowboy.
Yeah, well, here's the thing: is that the original these guys, they had a fan campaign because when they did with Kyle Rayner, they hated Kyle Rayner, and they had this campaign that launched for 10 plus years against DC to get DC to change it back. So, because they had a fair bit of a point with the fact that the parallax point, could have been done better. They wanted to have that changed. They didn't like that. And they had the campaign went for 10 plus years, and they won. DC reversed their decision.
Congratulations, you got what you wanted. Now look what you're stuck with, dumbasses.
If you want a bit more with this, The Escapist movie, Bob, he did Thinking Green, Part 1 and Part 2, I think is the episodes. Basically, the ones with Green Lantern on the image on the thumbnail.
So back on
they
task.
cover it.
Thank you, Squato.
Yeah.
Back on task. Killerfish. Obviously, from what you're saying is that this story, the Talumi, however you pronounce it, is
The Elenium and the Tamalai.
Tamalai. Thank you. Go on.
Oh, the Elenium and the Tamalai. Yes, I enjoyed reading the series. Sparhawk is... I'd like to think he's a believable character. Some people might disagree with me, but... I like it. I don't care what you say. David Eddings, the Tamalai, the Elenium. Well, read the Elenium first, then read the Tamalai. Done.
Excellent. Okay, Squato, you have Under the Red Hood, right?
Yep.
Go for it.
Okay, just fixing up something. I was just quickly having to check. Sorry.
Okay,
Done.
while he's doing that.
That's it. Done.
Done. Okay.
Sorry, I had to do something real quick because it was a bit of an issue with the Firefox. Yeah, Under the Red Hood. This is what I'm reviewing this. Now, if you know, if you've heard the title, pretty much you should be very aware of what Under the Red Hood is. So, yeah, you have a fair idea of what I'm going to do. If you haven't seen or have anything with that, I'm going to outright say, yeah, I'm going to spoil it, but the thing is, I reckon this story is a lot better with spoilers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But the thing is, this story is a lot better if you know the spoilers, because, yeah, look, some people are like, oh, you don't need to tell the details. The thing is, if you don't actually have an idea for it, this actually is... It feels a lot like it was designed for the fans, because there's a lot of things they don't explain, partly because they don't actually require to explain them.
Yeah.
But if you're going in blank, you're going to get confused. So we're going to spoil the fuck out of it. And look, it's just to make sure it's better. But yeah, you really need to watch this film. Basically, it's actually Batman Under the Red Hood. And the very closest you can get to in terms of how they're doing this type of Batman story, it's The Dark Knight if animated.
Yeah. It's really good.
It's also very dark.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny because they actually, the one I recorded, they actually had, it was on 9:30 at night, but it was on pay TV in Australia. It was on the Family Movie Channel, which is actually a Disney-owned channel. I'm laughing my ass off about that.
Yeah.
This is M-rated material.
Oh, yeah. It's violent. It's very violent.
The very first scenes in the film, this is really going to get people the idea of how violent it is. It basically has Ra's al Ghul being in a bit of level of shock when he finds out that the Joker, who he'd hired to do a job, had gone way too far, had taken Robin, and Batman was going to try and save Batman to Robin, but was not going to make it. Crossed to Robin with Joker, and Robin has a crowbar, constantly hitting him, asking if it hurts more. Yeah, the Joker in it. The Joker is hitting him with a crowbar, saying, "Does it hurt does it feel better if I hit you with the backhand, or just front?"
Yeah,
and you see blood.
He is the sadistic, sick, twisted Joker that really
haunts your nightmares,
yeah,
and leaves you shuddering underneath your bedclothes.
He really, and they really do show it. You get the idea. This is the type of Joker you don't want to fuck with. This is a type of Joker that will show you a magic trick.
Oh, this is the kind of Joker you don't want to fuck with unless you're Harley Quinn.
Yes.
But yeah, so this whole thing was just that was what was going on, and it ends with when the Joker leaves, saying, "You worst well, do your homework," and basically, and a few other little snarky comments, and then leaves. Jason Todd, yes, that's who this Robin is, tries to make grand escape and finds out he's going to die when it explodes, the building he's in. Seconds before Batman saves him.
Oh, that fails.
Now, yeah. For those people who are unaware, Jason Todd was the second Robin. Basically, he came in after the first Robin had grown way too old to play the character, and because the people that were doing the story went, we kind of can't have this guy being the Robin because he's in his 20s. It's not believable for him to be known as the Boy Wonder. So they decided to come in with a new Robin. The reaction from the fans was, "We don't like this guy!"
Well, there was very good reason for him, the fans, to not like him. He sucked. He was a whiny brat. That they really needed to replace him. The thing is, that was not. When I say that where there was potential, it was not the one which was in the stories. The one that was created was the one that was really the good one. The problem is that he had executive meddling, that they want him to be more happy for kids and make him more adaptable and make kids more happy to read the Batman comics. Yeah, and that's what really.
Yeah. So they made him a whiny, sarcastic little brat that nobody liked and everybody wanted to throttle.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And the thing about it, just real quick, just to do a sort of a historical rewind about the Jason Todd character, the reason in comic, in canon, he was killed is because the DC people said, all right, fine, you know what, we're getting tired of these letters, we're getting tired of the campaigns, let's settle this once and for all. We're going to publish a story. At the end of the comic, there's going to be 2 versions of the ending. Batman's going to realize that he was too late and Jason Todd is dead. The other version is he was just in the nick of time. He manages to get to Jason Todd, beat and bruised, blown the hell up, but he's still alive and Batman can save him. At the end of that edition of the comic, there's going to be 2 phone numbers. It's going to be a phone-in poll. You call the number that matches the ending that you want to see for this character. Overwhelmingly, the fans said, kill him.
To be fair, the overwhelming support to kill the character, apparently it was sort of even for the most part until the last day or so. Then there was this huge upswell to kill the character, partly because the information had leaked.
Yeah. So, getting back to the actual storyline. Go.
Yeah. So yeah, basically they did that, and they killed off Robin. Now it crosses to 5 years later, and they got a whole bunch of people that are in Gotham. The gangsters, they're the crime lords. They've got their own little sections, and they're unhappy because what's happened is, in the meantime, one person has been able to rise up to be basically the head crime lord for Gotham City. Now, the crime fighting, the gang wars and all that, it has stopped. The problem is that this guy basically has a stranglehold on it. No one can have any say because he's too powerful for them. The guy's also a crazy fuck that likes to shoot a scenery too, but that's just beside the point. And so they're unhappy with the situation. Then in steps this person wearing a red mask or a red hood, and he says that he's got an offer for them. If they go to him, he'll give them 40% cut to the mere scraps that they're getting under the current deal. If they don't, he will destroy them. And to prove it, he throws a bag on the table. They open up, and it's all of their each one of the guys' lieutenants' heads. And he said, I did that in 2 hours. Imagine what I can do in one night. So, yeah, that basically means that the guy that's previously the head honcho for the city has suddenly lost his entire base of support because no one's buying, or none of his guys that he had under his control, his gangs, a lot of them are split, and they've gone under the Red Hood. So now you're getting gang war starting to brew between the two powers, between Red Hood's people, who are now loyal to him, largely because he's giving them money, and he can really prove that they don't want to fuck with him, and the other guy, who was a person by the name of Black Mask. Black Mask, they don't go too much detail on that, but in the story, basically, he was, he was a friend of Batman, who was also a rich family. The guy apparently didn't do very well as a business leader, but Bruce Wayne was very friendly to him, and the guy got scarred with his own chemicals that the company made. But as it turns out, after that he became a much better criminal than he was a business person. So he was able to basically settle the crime problem in Gotham by basically taking control of it. It's still there, and he's not a hero, he's a villain, but that's the general quick premise of it. I think that's what they're going with that one, as opposed to the guy that was in charge of Arkham Asylum. That one is more for the game. Anyway, so yeah, he's...
Sorry, you made me laugh with that toss in. Go ahead.
Yeah, so he's basically the whole villain with this, and as I said, when he chooses Serenity, he's brilliant, because whenever he gets angry, every person all of his guys, they really don't like it when he rages, because they know what's going to happen. He's a small guy compared to them. These guys are, these are really tall, big, strong, bulky guys that they can basically punch someone out with one hit. He knocks them out with one hit. He breaks their noses and jaws. So they don't like it when he's around and he's angry. And he's always angry.
So, okay. You're rabbit holing this. Story.
Yeah, basically that's the sort of thing. And as I said, the gang wars are starting to build up. Both sides getting more and more pissed off with each other. Batman is trying to... a few things. One, work out who the fuck this person is, and the new... who Red Hood is, particularly because he's had run-ins with Red Hoods in the past. The last particular Red Hood was the guy that became the Joker. And he's trying to work out this one. He's trying to make sure that no criminals get any advantages in it. And this is when the Batman gambits really start to play up from it, because as it ultimately turns out, there was a deliberate reason why the person went with the character Red Hood. He finds out that the person knows who he is, and there's only one person that would... And this is when they have a parkour fight. Well, it's basically a chase. And that's such a brilliantly edited together fight. You look at it, you think this is realistic.
Oh yeah,
that's how good they did that.
Well, what told me it was realistic is when you're watching the Red Hood fighting in military-style combat boots, you're thinking, "Wow, that looks like how somebody would run, move, jump, etc. in military-style combat boots, which are not easy to run, move, etc. in." By the way, if anybody's never worn them. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, they do a lot of little things like that, and they even get the parkour moves actually pretty close to how they would really move, how people do parkour really move in real life. And yeah, as Nightwing says, this guy's got really good moves. Although Batman's immediate reply was, "It's nothing we haven't seen before."
That's the point at which Batman obviously has an idea what's going on, but he can't confirm it without investigating more, which he does.
No, he didn't actually know at the time, but he doesn't want to admit that there's something that's impressed him because it's a villain, and villains never are good.
Well, yeah, but he has seen it before, and that's what leads him to start investigating. That's when he realizes that somebody's moving moves that are very, 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 very familiar, and only one other person besides Nightwing and the current Robin has the capability of doing what he did.
No, there was no other Robin there was only two Robins.
There wasn't?
One was dead.
Okay, well,
no.
Obviously they hadn't introduced a new Robin at that point. I thought they did. Anyways.
No. Yeah, basically the hints, and they come together, and it turns out that who this person was is Jason Todd, back from the dead.
Oh yeah, and him coming back from the dead. They show the scene where Ra's al Ghul does a flashback, tells about it. Oh my God, that's disturbing. I'm like, this is never being shown to our daughter until she's old enough to handle gore.
Mm-hmm. As I said, this is M-rated.
Sorry, what were you talking about?
I'll give you one bit for those people who are unsure. When Robin comes back from the dead, he does an eye scream. I'm using the chalk for it. And for those people who don't know what an eye scream is, it's when a guy gorges out someone's eyes with their thumbs. That's the one thing I'm going to say about that scene.
Yeah, it's really, really watch it with a good constitution with the lights on. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, so
everything sort of coming together, and because of this, Black Mark basically goes, you know what, I'm going to really step up this game. This person has blown everything out of the water. I have no other option, and his one option is to get the one person who can really shake things up against this guy. He gets someone to go into Arkham Asylum and releases the person that knows he's going to have a tea party. The Joker.
Yeah, this is basically a three-way war, and the underdog has tried to use nuclear weapons.
Yeah, well, actually the best way is that it's a Batman gambit. Everyone's using Batman gambits except for Batman.
So,
because this was a Batman game, but the whole plan was Jason Todd set everything up so that the Joker would be released from prison, so that then he could personally get the guy and try and kill him. But that was not the real part. The real thing was because he wanted to confront Batman with the Joker and say to him, why have you not killed this man? Why was it that this man died? Even though the Joker apparently went into 6 months traction for killing Jason Todd, why was it that he never crossed that line? Or him?
Yeah, fade to black for our particular batch of spoilers. It's I'm going to kind of tread on your review here. It's really good.
Yes. The ending for it is brilliant, particularly because, as I said, when I went with the whole Dark Knight type of thing, it's that also type of thing where no one actually wins. It's more of a case of you try to lose the least.
Exactly.
And they nailed it so perfectly with this thing. Yeah, it's brilliant. Now there's
I found myself really wishing that they could have done it live action with a full cast and special effects budget, because it was just that good. I mean, great as an animated piece, but to really hit the audience that it really deserves, it really if they had done it as a live action, everybody that went to see The Dark Knight and made it one of the top grossing movies of all time would have said, oh, this looks like it's another thing that I might like to see. They would go to see it and they'd say, oh, it met my expectations and more. And they would tell their friends to see it. As an animated film, it kind of suffers from Disney-itis, which you saw yourself. It's on a show for kids. It's like, no, people! It's like, what do we have to do? Show tits?
To be fair, they don't actually shy away from the violence. In fact, they actually... I will give one spoiler for how someone dies. He's got a laser weapon, or a type of plasma type laser system that's faced over his eye. How someone kills him is that they put a taser straight in the socket of that. It electrocutes and then explodes. The problem is it's right over his face.
Yeah. That was creepy.
Oh, fuck yeah.
I'm watching that fight scene, I'm all, ha, 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 ha.
Yeah, sorry I've gone quiet for a second there. I'm just, contemplating.
Yes. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Obviously...
It's a really good one, but I was going to say there's a side element to it that I should add, and that is because... No, it wasn't 52. It was the one where Superboy Prime, aka I kill you to death.
Yeah, there was the aftermath to 52 and the lead up to Crisis, I think.
Countdown to Final Crisis.
That's it. Yeah, because this story originally was part of that whole premise, because they really wanted to show that with the Superboy Prime's action, it was resulting in other big things, and one of those was the fact that basically Jason Todd came back. Now, when the story happened, look, there's a lot of crap around with Superboy Prime, and it really is crap. This one was one that people went, but there was potential element. There was a kernel of great storytelling in it. And so what's happened is that they basically went, this is a good idea, we're going to do something with it. They did the animated version. They got the same writer who did the original story. He came in, so everything is exactly the same as that, except for one thing. Everyone now basically treats the original version as the fan fiction to this story. This is basically the canon version.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. Okay, we are an hour and a half in to our part 2, which was only supposed to be an hour. We even tried cutting down the discussion. We failed. We failed badly. So let's wrap it up. Just, gentlemen, keep this tight, lasered up. Just to remind everybody, thanks to Shastrix, who has provided the web hosting bandwidth. Everybody who wants to contact us, they can contact us at community.910cmx.com, bunnycast@gmail.com, or by going to the Bunnycast forums at shastrix.com/bunnycast. Elguna Shive is at egscomics.com, and you can contact or follow Dan Shive at twitter.com/DanTheShive. Projects, personal projects for our team. I am, of course, working on Naked Computers, which I went over in part 1 briefly for the listener. Killerfish.
I'm transforming an Xbox controller into a PC USB controller, or I have done, and I'm trying to make people aware of it by stealthily sneaking into conversation.
Squato, go.
I'm doing what I am doing.
Hooray! All right.
I'm doing something.
Okay, so what do you two have to say for yourselves? Dragging this on something.
It's Squato's fault.
Squato?
All I was going to say is expect that we would do something like that with this anyway.
You're probably right. All right, wrapping it up. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Good morning.
No easy text, baby. But it makes me feel alive when you're here by my side. You complete the two of us, you make the rules apply. It's a crazy world, in a twisted turn of reality. It's you and me, and I need you here to keep some sanity. We are but pawns in a faded game of cat and mouse.
The Bunnycast is a production of the Bunnycast Network. The opinions of the guests and hosts are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the network. Crazy World is a production of Seth Jeffrey and is used without permission. Example versus REN, The One Who Changed the Way I Love, is mixed by Hi-Fi Banjo Strings, is available on the artist page on SoundCloud.com, and is used without permission.
Power in my hand, the world at my command. But now all that I want is just to be your man. It's a crazy world, in a twisted turn of reality. It's you and me, and I need you here to keep some sanity. We are but pawns in a faded game of cat and mouse. Maybe a couple of guinea pigs thrown out here and there. It's a crazy world, it's all messed up in my head. I got you, I don't care.